Under the cold wash of moonlight, the desert lay silent, until the crack of rifles split the night. Bullets rained down from the ridgeline, slamming into the dirt around the small SEAL team pinned against a half-collapsed mud wall. Dust clouded their lungs, and every man knew the truth no one wanted to say out loud. They had walked into an ambush. Contact left. 2 o'clock, one of the operators bellowed, his voice ragged from the sand and smoke. Ghost One, the team leader, pressed his back against a wall and scanned the darkness. He had fought enough wars to recognize the rhythm of panic, the quickening breaths of men who realized the odds were stacked too high. They were supposed to be hunting a small pocket of fighters, 20 at most, but the flashes across the horizon, the shouts echoing through alleys, and the endless thud of incoming fire told a different story. There were dozens, maybe more, and they weren't retreating. They were closing in, reloading. Another SEAL shouted, sliding a fresh magazine into his rifle with shaking hands. His name was Carter, the youngest in the unit, barely 24. He had swaggered on the flight in, but now the weight of real combat pressed him flat, his bravado draining away with every passing minute. Next to him, Alvarez gritted his teeth as blood darkened his sleeve. He had taken a round high in the arm, but he refused to stop firing. Each burst of his rifle carving sparks from the darkness. Ghost One scanned his men, his jaw tight. 4 wounded, ammo burning too fast. No air support, no way out. He clenched the radio, thumb pressing the transmit button. This is Ghost One, we're surrounded. Any station, come in. Nothing. Static hissed back, cruel and empty. He tried again, louder this time. We are compromised. Need immediate support. Still nothing. The comms were jammed. Beside him, Carter cursed. They've boxed us in. They're not going to let us walk out. His voice cracked, the raw sound of a man staring at his own ending. Quiet. Ghost One snapped, though his own pulse thundered in his ears. He'd been cornered before, but this felt different. The enemy wasn't rushing. They were circling, tightening, savoring the kill. Wolves toying with prey. Another explosion ripped through the far end of the wall, showering the team with fragments. The ground shook. Alvarez grunted, slumping against the rubble. Ghost One dragged him upright, forcing his friend's eyes open. Stay with me, hermano. We're not done. But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at the edges of his conviction. He had seen ambushes like this before. They ended in body bags draped with flags. The men huddled closer, shoulders brushing, their breaths ragged and shallow. None of them spoke the truth. There was no miracle coming. Command didn't even know the scale of this trap. They were alone, and the desert was swallowing them. Then a sound cut through the chaos. It wasn't the shriek of incoming fire or the whistle of mortars. It was a voice. Calm, steady, female, Ghost 11 on your 6. The words floated into their calms as if carried on the night wind. For a moment, everyone froze. The gunfire seemed to dim, the shouts of the enemy receding into the background. Carter turned sharply, eyes wide. What the hell was that? Ghost One frowned, his knuckles white around his rifle. There wasn't supposed to be a Ghost 11. Their team numbers ended at 10. No woman was anywhere near this mission. And yet there it was. A voice sharp with confidence, threaded with something none of them had felt in the last hour. Control. Who is this? Ghost One demanded into the mic, his tone cutting. Static. A beat of silence. Then the same voice again, firmer now. On your 6. Move. Carter shook his head, panic creeping back. This doesn't make sense. We're cooked, and now, what? Some phantom operators talking to us? We don't have a Ghost 11. Shut it, Alvarez muttered, clutching his bleeding arm. His face was pale, but his eyes burned. I don't care if it's God himself. If that voice has a plan, we listen. Gunfire raked the wall again, forcing the men lower. Dust filled their mouths, thick and bitter. Ghost One's heart hammered. He wanted to dismiss it, to assume the stress was playing tricks. But deep down, something about the tone struck him. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't bravado. It was precise, deliberate, like someone who had been waiting for this exact moment. Ghost 11, identify yourself, he said again, his voice low and sharp. But before the channel could answer, another burst of fire slammed into their cover. Carter shouted in pain as shards of rock cut his cheek. The enemy's circle tightened, shadows closing from every angle. The desert had become a cage. And yet, beneath the thunder of gunfire, Ghost 1 found himself listening for it. The voice. The only lifeline in the storm. He didn't know if it was real, didn't know if he was about to gamble his men's lives on a phantom. But when he locked eyes with his wounded brothers, he saw the reflection of his own thought. Maybe, just maybe, the ghost was real. And if she was, she might be the only way they would live to see dawn. Claire Arden had learned early what it meant to be underestimated. At 15, standing barefoot on a cold gym floor, she'd stare at the scoreboard of her high school track meet, while whispers followed her like shadows. Too short, too slight, too fragile. She was fast, blisteringly so, but no matter how many races she won, the murmurs always circled back. She's tough for a girl, but she'll break eventually. Those words never left her. They dug into her bones and became the fuel she carried long after the crowd stopped watching. Her brother, Michael, never doubted her. He was her anchor, her hero, a Marine who wore his uniform with quiet pride. When she was 12, he had hoisted her onto his shoulders during a 4th of July parade, pointing at the passing color guard and whispering, "Someday, you'll stand where I stand." She believed him. He believed her. And when his coffin returned home wrapped in the flag he had sworn to defend, Claire made herself a promise. She would not let his sacrifice be the end of the story. But dreams, no matter how sharp, don't silence doubters. By the time she walked into the Naval Special Warfare Training compound, the skepticism was suffocating. The courtyard was filled with men built like stone, their eyes already hardened from lives spent proving themselves in battles she had only read about. Claire stood among them, 5'4", weighing in at barely 120 pounds, her ponytail tucked beneath her cap. One instructor took a long look at her and shook his head. "You won't last a week," he said loudly enough for every candidate to hear. Day after day, they tried to make that prophecy come true. The Pacific swallowed her during pre-dawn swims, its freezing currents clawing at her lungs. Logs bigger than her body pressed into her shoulders, digging raw bruises into her collarbone. Sand burned her eyes, salt water tore her skin, and her feet bled into her boots until every step left a print of red. Instructors screamed that she was wasting a slot, that she was stealing oxygen from men who deserved it more. She never screamed back. She just kept moving. But the nights were the hardest. Alone in the barracks, she peeled off her socks and found skin torn raw, toenails gone, muscles trembling. She would wrap her feet in gauze, stare into mirror, and wonder if they were right. Her face grew thinner each week, her eyes hollow from exhaustion, and sometimes the reflection felt like a stranger. But then she would touch the chain around her neck, the one that held her brother's dog tags, and the stranger would vanish. Quitting wasn't an option. Still, the whispers followed her, even among the men training by her side. They didn't call her Claire. They didn't call her Arden. They called her the token, the one the Navy had let in just to prove a point. Some of them bet on when she quit. Others ignored her completely, as if she were already a ghost. And maybe, in a way, she passed evolutions no one thought she could survive, but she was never invited into the inner circle. Her victories were dismissed as luck, her endurance chalked up to stubbornness instead of strength. She had earned the right to be there, but the room never opened for her. And when the final phase of training ended, she discovered the cost of carving a path no one wanted her to take. The Navy didn't know what to do with her. They gave her assignments in intelligence, monitoring drone feeds, and intercepting enemy communications. It was important work, but it kept her far from the fight she had trained to endure. She was a shadow behind the screens, the analyst who spotted threats others overlooked. And even then, her reports were often filed away without action, her warnings lost beneath louder voices. Her father visited once, his uniform long since retired, his hair graying at the edges. He looked at her across the table and sighed. "Claire, you don't have to keep chasing this. You've already proven yourself." But she shook her head. Proving herself was never the goal. Carrying Michael's promise was. Still, isolation carved deep wounds. She watched as her classmates were assigned to legendary teams, their names carried like banners in whispered stories. And she remained in the shadows, known only by her call sign, Ghost 11, not a legend, not even officially acknowledged, just a number hidden on a roster no one talked about. Sometimes, late at night, she would stand outside on the tarmac, staring at the stars. She would remember the crowd at her track meet, the sting of their doubt, and she would imagine them watching her now. She wondered if they would finally understand, or if they would laugh just the same, dismissing her as someone pretending to stand among giants. The struggle never broke her body, but it wore at her heart. She didn't want medals or speeches. She wanted the chance to stand shoulder to shoulder with the very men who dismissed her, not to prove she was better, but to prove she would not let them fall. And then came the mission briefing that would change everything. A compound raid. High stakes. A team she wasn't supposed to join. She sat in the shadows as the operators reviewed intel, her voice muted by the weight of their skepticism. She warned them the enemy was larger than the report suggested. They didn't listen. She returned to her screens, watching the mission unfold from a dimly lit command tent. And when the first desperate transmissions crackled in, the shouts, the gunfire, the sound of men realizing they were trapped, her chest clenched like it had the day Michael's flag came home. History was repeating, and this time, she swore she would not stay silent. The dust had barely settled when the helicopters lifted off, leaving the SEAL team crouched in the desert silence. Their boots sank into sand still warm from the sun, and the night stretched out before them like a mouth waiting to close. Ghost One scanned the horizon, his instincts prickling. Something felt wrong. The briefing had promised a quick strike, a clean extraction. 20 enemy combatants lightly armed. But the hairs on his neck told another story. He had been in the game too long to ignore it. Inside the command 10 miles away, Claire Arden leaned forward over the glowing monitors. Her eyes tracked every feed, drone footage, intercepted chatter, heat signatures painted across the black and green screens. And what she saw confirmed what her gut had screamed earlier. The enemy wasn't 20. They were at least 4 times that number, spread like a net waiting to close. She could almost feel the tension vibrating off the team through the comms, though her voice had been muted before the mission began. No one wanted to hear from the ghost in the shadows. Carter's voice crackled over the channel. Movement on the ridge, northwest. Looks like 3, maybe 4. He sounded steady, but Claire caught the slight hitch in his breath. He was green, not unskilled, but untested in the way battle exposes. She had read his file. Bright, eager, desperate to prove himself. Now, facing the unseen tide, his confidence was starting to fray. Ghost One replied calmly, his voice the steel thread, holding the group together. Copy. Keep your eyes sharp. We move in 2. His tone carried authority, but underneath, Claire heard what the others couldn't, a sharpened edge of doubt. He felt it too. The team pushed forward, slipping through narrow alleys of crumbling stone, rifles sweeping in arcs. The moon threw jagged shadows across the walls, turning every doorway into a potential barrel, every rooftop into a sniper's nest. Alvarez, bleeding from his earlier scrape, trudged on without complaint. He was a rock, a man whose endurance inspired others, but Claire's eyes locked on the way he favored his injured arm. He wouldn't slow down, not here, not when the lives of his brothers depended on him. Then came the first strike. A spray of gunfire erupted from the rooftops, red tracers tearing across the night. The SEALs dove for cover, returning fire in sharp, controlled bursts. The air filled with the metallic scent of gunpowder, the acrid sting of smoke. Ghost One barked orders, moving them like chess pieces through the chaos. But for every enemy they dropped, 2 more shadows moved in. From her screen, Claire's stomach twisted. She could see the heat signatures flanking, converging. They weren't attacking blindly. They were herding, closing the circle inch by inch. She grabbed her headset, toggled transmit. Ghost One, you need to fall back. Enemy strength is heavier than you think. Repeat, you are being surrounded. Static. Her message went nowhere. The channel had been locked. Someone had made sure her voice wouldn't carry into the field. Her fists clenched. She tried again, hacking around the block, forcing her signal through back channels she wasn't supposed to access. It was reckless, a violation protocol that could end her career. But the alternative was listening to the same silence she had heard years ago when her brother's patrol stopped answering their comms. She wouldn't let history write the same ending. On the ground, the team pressed tighter. Bullets struck the mud walls, chipping off shards that cut their faces. Carter shouted over the din, "They're everywhere! We can't push forward." Ghost One ignored the fear in his voice and checked his watch. Extraction was supposed to be in 40 minutes. At this rate, they wouldn't last 10. He weighed impossible choices: push forward and risk being cut down, or hold ground and be buried. Claire's voice finally broke through the comms, sharp and clear. "You're boxed in. Listen to me. Enemy units are moving on your 6. You have less than 3 minutes before they collapse the gap." The operators froze. Every man turned instinctively toward Ghost One, waiting for him to react. His face tightened. That voice, female, steady, confident, wasn't supposed to be there. He didn't know her. But in the middle of the storm, it carried something he recognized: the cadence of truth. Carter's eyes widened. "Who the hell is that? We don't have a Ghost 11. Alvarez grunted, firing another burst into the dark. "Doesn't matter who she is. She knows more than we do." Ghost One hesitated only a second before answering. "Ghost 11, say again." "On your 6. They're tightening the net. If you stay put, you're dead." Her voice didn't waver, not once. She wasn't pleading. She was directing. The team shifted, unsure whether to trust a phantom voice. Ghost One's instincts battled his training. He had seen traps built on misinformation before, whispers fed to break men's trust. But as he looked at his men, the blood on Alvarez's arm, the fear cracking Carter's mask, the sheer impossibility of the odds, he made his choice. "Copy, Ghost 11, he said finally. "Guide us." Claire exhaled, relief flooding her chest. It wasn't over. Not yet. She rerouted her feeds, calculating firing lines, enemy clusters, escape vectors. Her mind raced faster than her heart. For the first time, she wasn't just a ghost behind the screen. She was in the fight, her brother's promise burning in her veins. On the ground, the team shifted, preparing to move under her direction. But even as they readied, the sound of boots and shouted commands echoed from the alleys. The enemy had realized their prey was slipping. The circle was closing faster now, a noose drawn tight. And in that moment, with fire on every side and her voice cutting through the dark, Claire Arden understood. This was the battle she'd been walking toward her entire life. The first rocket-propelled grenade streaked across the alley like a comet, slamming into the wall just yards from the team. The blast threw Carter onto his back, dust choking his lungs, ears ringing like church bells. Ghost One yanked him up, shaking off the shock. "Stay on your feet, Marine. We move when she says move." His voice cut through the ringing, anchoring them all. From the ridgeline, Claire Arden had eyes on everything. Through her scope, she saw the muzzle flashes flaring like fireflies, insurgents pouring in waves. Every instinct screamed at her to squeeze the trigger. But she held, waiting for the angle that would matter most. She knew she had one job now. Cut a hole for them to escape, no matter what it cost. 2 hostiles roof left, 30 meters. "Carter, take the one closest to the vent. Now." Her words were crisp, precise. Carter obeyed, firing a burst that dropped the fighter instantly. Shock rippled through him. This voice, this unseen commander, had given him clarity when he thought he was done. Alvarez covered the other rooftop, bullets spraying sparks as another enemy tumbled. The enemy adjusted quickly, unleashing a hailstorm of fire. Tracers carved the night red and green, tearing chunks from the walls, sparks showering like angry stars. Alvarez grunted, hit again in the shoulder, but refused to stop. Blood streaked his fatigues, yet his rifle never wavered. Claire's voice steadied them. "Push east, 20 meters. Alley narrows, you'll choke them there." Ghost One led the charge, dragging Alvarez while Carter and the others laid suppressive fire. The alley seemed endless, Each step through smoke and gunfire a gamble. The men moved because she told them to, because something in her voice made survival feel possible. A machine gun roared from a hidden nest, rounds chewing into stone, pinning them. Carter dug behind rubble, terror flooding his chest. We're cut off again. Claire didn't flinch. She shifted her scope, calculated the angle. The gunner revealed half his head as he adjusted, and that half was enough. One precise squeeze, crack, silence. "Gunner down," she said flatly, then, "Move, now." The team surged forward. For a moment, momentum returned, adrenaline drowning fear. But then came the second wave. Dozens of fighters spilled into the street ahead, howling in rage, RPGs raised. Ghost One cursed under his breath. "Too many. We can't break through." Claire sprinted lower along the ridge, sand grinding under her boots, eyes locked to her sights. Her breath came in sharp bursts, but her hands were steady. "I'll clear the path. Keep your heads down." The insurgents advanced, shouting in their tongue, weapons raised. Claire fired again and again, her shots like thunder rolling over the battlefield. Each trigger pull dropped a fighter. Each movement bought the SEALs another heartbeat. Her arm burned from recoil. Her lungs tore the thin desert air. But she didn't stop. The men below felt it, the rhythm of her gunfire syncing with their movements. Ghost 11 wasn't a myth anymore. She was the axis of their survival. "Advance!" Ghost 1 barked. His men obeyed, moving in staggered steps behind her precision. For every enemy that appeared, she carved a gap, dragging them through fire. Then catastrophe. An RPG fired from close range, screaming toward the squad. Claire saw it before anyone else. She shouted into comms, "Down now!" The rocket exploded against the wall, hurling bodies like rag dolls. Carter landed hard, ears ringing, chest screaming with pain. Ghost One crawled to him, dragging him upright again. "Stay in the fight." Through the haze, Claire steadied her rifle despite the pain lancing her ribs from a blast wave. Her scope locked on the RPG gunner silhouette. One pull, one drop. But her vision blurred. Blood trickled from her temple where debris had struck. She forced her focus back, biting down on the copper taste in her mouth. The SEALs regrouped, battered but alive. Ghost One's voice broke the silence. "We're almost clear. Ghost 11, where to?" She scanned quickly, heartbeat hammering. The village narrowed ahead to a single escape corridor. But it was closing fast, enemies flooding in to seal the last gap. If they didn't move now, it was over. Forward, 60 meters. "I'll handle the flank." She didn't wait for acknowledgement. She sprinted from her position. Closing distance, moving into the very teeth of danger. Her boots pounded against the sand, rifle barking in short, precise bursts. She became the storm, darting, firing, shifting. Every second she remained exposed was borrowed time. Carter saw her through the smoke, a lone silhouette wreathed in muzzle flashes. "She's insane," he whispered, but in his eyes was awe, not doubt. The team poured forward, driven by her fury. Ghost One hauled Alvarez, who was barely conscious now, but still clung to his rifle. Each man gave every ounce left, their strength tied to hers. Then came the final surge. A wave of fighters poured into the corridor, too many to count, voices rising in one thunderous cry. Claire skidded into cover, slammed her last magazine into place, and spoke into the comms with icy calm. "This is Ghost 11. On me." The SEALs obeyed, lining their fire with hers. Together, they unleashed hell, bullets slicing the wave, cutting holes through the mass of bodies. The desert night became a furnace of sound. Screams, gunfire, the crash of collapsing stone. One by one, the enemy faltered. The charge broke. Survivors scattered into darkness, swallowed by silence. For a moment, there was nothing but the hiss of smoke and the ragged breath of men who had stared at death and walked away. Claire leaned against the wall, her arm trembling, blood dripping from her temple. She lowered her rifle slowly, exhaustion crashing into her like a tide. Ghost One's voice broke through the stillness. "All teams accounted for. We're alive." He turned toward the ridgeline, searching the shadows. "Because of you." Claire said nothing. She only closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her brother's dog tags against her chest, and breathed. The battle was over. But dawn was coming, and with it, the reckoning.